you know, one thing I always say, when something happens, I'll say they have no idea how hard I'm willing to work. I will outwork anybody. I will outread anybody. I will outstudy anybody.
Yes.
I will outtask anybody. And even if I'm not naturally good at something, sometimes just discipline and persistence is just enough to get you through the door than someone who's naturally more talented than you.
All right. Fun.
Welcome.
I feel like this is surreal because I've been trying to get you to do this for Third Culture Africans for forever.
I know.
And it's nice actually sat here doing it with you on your platform. So
yeah,
this is going to be fun.
It will be. So this is our first podcast recording for SeeMe. And SeeMe is our lived experience mentoring and executive coaching organization, which I founded. But also predominantly, we want to use this session just to talk about life and who's Eghosa and why all these pursuits and why all these things. And what better way than to have my sister,
I feel honored,
who has her own podcast, Third Culture Africans, which is very successful and doing very well and growing, act as my guest interviewer to guide me through what I feel is an unveiling conversation about SeeMe, about me, my journey, where I am now and where I'd like to go with all the experience which I've gathered in the industry and what my passions are and what impact I'd like to make and the mark I'd like to live in the world. So thank you for joining me all the way in Dubai.
I know.
It's great to have you. I'll do less talking and let you lead and guide, obviously.
It's your podcast. I feel like this is the first time where I actually get to have more of a conversation on a podcast.
Yeah.
Because usually I'm the one prepping, asking the questions. You're my sister, so I feel
what
like...
What do you have to prep for?
What am I prepping for? I do have notes, though.
Okay.
Just because the podcaster in me has to have notes.
Yes.
But I think we can start with like a basic intro, right?
Yeah.
Like, tell me about yourself. Who are you? What's your name? Stranger.
You know, that's actually a really good one. Because
Yeah.
you don't ever think to say your name.
Nope.
Yeah, indeed. So my name is Eghosa Oriaikhi Mabhena. I am in the 4th decade of life.
I didn't ask age.
We'll
I
leave
didn't
it
say
there.
age.
No, it's good to establish accomplishment with tenure, okay?
Okay, cool.
You know, coming into this, I actually went back and watched my TED Talk, which I did many years ago in Barcelona at IESC, where I did my MBA. And I love my alma mater.
You were amazing, by the way, the TED Talk.
Thank you. It's always hard to watch myself, I have to be honest. And I think that's why I've been hesitant to do podcasts, because as a mechanical engineer, you stay in the background a lot. And we're not really people who are out there, so to speak. But as I'm coming into senior leadership roles, executive roles, looking at board positions, and I have, you know, my opinions on the industry, energy industry, where I've worked for the last 24 years, and what my passions and what my desires are for the future of the energy industry. I think it's time to speak up a bit more, and also to realize that where I've come from, my journey can be an example to other young women as well.
I agree.
And so, you know, to have gold and not share it, I think is not the right way to leave a mark on the world. So I'm ready to sort of share that journey. But watching my TED Talk, which was about being your authentic self, listening to my younger self talk about how to live your truth and how to be it, and how to encompass your real self. I remember thinking, gosh, I wish I knew her. Wish I could learn a few things from her. So when you say, you know, who am I, and introduce yourself, and, you know, what's your name, it's almost like, what's my truth? And who really am I? You know, as a woman, as a mother, as a career professional, As a sister.
Hey, auntie.
Yes, indeed.
Part-time babysitter.
Absolutely. All those things. I think somewhere in there's all the introduction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's do it like I'm not your sister and we've just met and someone says, so who are you?
Indeed. I'm a mother of 2 children. I have a 5.5 and a 2.5-year-old. They're girls. I absolutely adore them. They're just the joy of my life. But aside from that, I lived many lives before they came along. I've been in the oil and gas industry for almost 24 years. I studied mechanical engineering as a bachelor's and a master's. I've worked for some pretty big companies in the industry. And I would say my last 3 roles have probably been the most impactful and pivotal because they were executive level roles, with 2 of them being, CEO, VP of Africa, and 1 being a CEO of, a global organization, which was privately owned. And as I mentioned, right now my current pursuits are around getting onto listed board positions to help direct and guide companies. And in the last 1.5 years, I also founded my own commodity trading company, which I'm leading.
Girl.
Thank you. And alongside that, just as a way of giving back and making a mark, I have founded an organization called SeeMe. And I guess the question is, do you see me? Can you see me? Everybody wants to be seen, right?
Okay, yeah, true.
Right? Everybody wants to be seen. And if I think through my career, at every point where I needed help or needed support, I just wanted to be seen. I still want to be seen. You want someone who can guide you, coach you, mentor you, and help you be the best of yourself. But taking all that aside, talking about the many lives I lived, I got into extreme sports for many years. Ironman triathlons.
I think before we get there, though, I feel like there has to be like the genesis story. So we're 3 girls.
Yes, indeed.
And you are the middle child.
Indeed.
So let's rewind.
All the things the books say true about middle children.
Let's rewind to the beginning. So you're the middle child.
Yeah.
I'm younger than you. But as middle children go, I think in some ways you are the archetype and in other ways not.
Okay.
I think as your sister, watching you ahead of me, from, I guess, earliest memories of being in primary school. And sort of, I think this whole thing about giving back has always been a thread in your life. And I remember in primary school, I had this teacher that wasn't particularly kind. And I remember you marching up.
I wrote the letter first.
You wrote the letter. I don't think anyone took your letter seriously. So I remember you marching up to the teacher and asking to have a word.
Yeah.
And this sense of protection and justice for people younger than you has always been there. And then move into secondary school, star athlete, star bookworm, star everything. I think you were even head girl at some point.
I was class prefect a lot of years and I was head girl. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So head girl, athlete, studious, great grades. You could do no wrong for a very long time. And before we get into like your actual career and what you've been able to achieve with that, I think it's important that, one, we talk about that part of your life. And at what point did you decide that it was excellence or nothing else?
Our parents. I want to say my parents. Our parents.
We had no option, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But from your perspective.
I think there's something that stands out as a child, okay? And I don't know if this is something that you and I have ever talked about. When I listen to Daddy's story, for example, and I think about where they, where him and mommy came from, right? And their families, very well-intentioned, very well-positioned within what local society defined. But here were 2 individuals who had their own personal ambitions. And daddy obviously got the scholarship to go to the UK to study. Mommy got her scholarship to go to France to study, and she was in Paris. And then upon returning, deciding, by the way, to return to Nigeria, you look at fundamentally two things. First one, what education and betterment of self did for them vis-a-vis in comparison to their peers who didn't make those decisions, and the boldness of the decision that they made, because at that time in Nigeria, it didn't seem to be any reason why you'd want to go and do something like that, right?
Yeah.
With the currency being where it was, and, your local society would effectively provide for you. Nigeria had found oil, was effectively independent, was growing.
And the Naira was strong, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
But not only that, then I think back to also the story of daddy working for Shell for so many years. And the fact that companies can do well and do good, that companies can create economic value. Now, I'm not supporting the brand in any way, but I'm just saying that at that time in the 70s, the drive to educate people in Nigeria, there's a whole cohort of them who were supported through these programs, and their children were supported through education.
Yep.
So two things I took away from their life story, and I remember that just being imprinted in me as a child. One, through boldness and courage, you can make decisions to change your life. And when you change your life, you can change the lives of so many other people because they impacted their family members and their friends around them, and they still do. But secondly, the organizations where they chose to work, and now obviously mommy became a serial entrepreneur, and through her own pursuits as a business owner, you can actually also create economic value, and that economic value can drive societal change. And that societal change, again, sets the precedence for generations to come as far as building generational wealth and creating generational freedom in so many ways. Yeah. And so I can articulate that now in my fourth decade.
I was about to say, gosh, you've thought about this.
Yeah, you have to write UCAS applications and all these applications. Yeah. And I used to wonder, what's driving me? Like, what is this relentless pursuit? Why don't I just rest? Why am I going?
In fairness, no, you never did.
Country to country, job to job.
Wait, it was Duke of Edinburgh, whatever extracurricular activities existed.
I was curious about exploring myself. I just had a curiosity to explore all of myself. And I still do. I still do. All of who I am, I want to explore. All of who I am, I want to achieve, in my lifetime, but not just to achieve it because I want to satisfy something in myself. One, I think it sets an example for people around me and inspires. I've always wanted to inspire. Two, it creates a certain peace in me, but also the value that I've generated from doing those activities, I've been able to create impact, and that impact has touched other lives. Yeah. That's what's always driven me, really, quite frankly. But I always do things I enjoy, though.
Yes, 1,000%. Now, I remember the sort of time in our family where you decided that UCL was where you were going.
Oh, yes, because they took the first female in the university in all of England.
Yes.
And it was a statement for me to go there.
Yeah. And I remember and I think this thread follows through as well, like when you are committed to something and how you tend to approach those things. So the idea of no, or my perception of how you see no, isn't the same way most people will see no. And I think it would be lovely to talk about that, because I think as a woman, one, in a very male-dominated industry that you're in, and two, in the space that you're now building, Lisena in, and no spoilers, but we'll get to what Lisena is. How do you feel, or how do you process when you get a no? Because women get a lot of no's, and I don't think we're conditioned for those no's, but you have kind of like a special ability to handle a no very well, and you've been able to do that your whole life.
Yeah. It's getting tougher with age. The knocks start to wear on you. No, but you're right. I never sat in a conversation or received anything as no. I heard things like, do it another way, or come back again, or try again, you know? And it would just create joy in me to create another pursuit.
Yeah.
And so I never thought someone was telling me no, because maybe there was always this inherent certainty that I was supposed to be there. I deserve to be there. One thing I always say, when something happens, I'll say they have no idea how hard I'm willing to work. I will outwork anybody. I will outread anybody. I will outstudy anybody.
Yes.
I will outtask anybody. And even if I'm not naturally good at something, sometimes just discipline and persistence is just enough to get you through the door than someone who's naturally more talented than you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I got into extreme sports, but we'll come to that.
But imagine being the kid who came after you.
I'm so sorry.
The expectation was that
luckily, mommy's expectation of us that we should cook. So, and I wasn't good at that. So I hope I did.
Well, this is true.
So the fact that I couldn't cook,
you compensated in your grades.
Then I can cook now for anybody who wants to visit me. I can cook now. But the fact that what was valued at home was more how good are you within the home.
Yeah.
No one treated me like a superstar, quite frankly.
I think when it came to like grades and like achievement, I think you left us so far in the dust that it was so clear that like, who are you again?
Yeah.
Are we siblings? I always say this like when we're in, I guess, your professional world. And I kind of still see you as my sister.
Yes.
And I don't see you as... And one part of my brain sees you as this all-achieving athlete, because your athleticism started from secondary school. Javelin was your thing. Running was your thing. And then alongside growing in the engineering field in your career, you found ways to still keep parts of your identity going.
Yeah.
And while you might say, oh, but I don't think it was celebrate. I think there was just so much to celebrate.
Yes.
And all of it was you, because I remember you training for the Ironman triathlon in the early days, and you're explaining to me your schedule. And I just kept looking at you like,
why?
But why? Why would you want to wake up at 4:00 and spend hours in the pool and then run hours? And then, and I think even watching you go through Duke of Edinburgh and how committed you were to that program and everything else in between. And I think, yes, amongst us as siblings, that's something we all kind of do. But you particularly so, I think, like you say, the discipline exists. And it's not just in one aspect of your life. You take that through every facet of your life. And that's unique. And I think the achievements you have had in your career, and no doubt going to have, play a huge part in that. And I think most people want to know the secret sauce, right? Everyone's seen you on CNN and they've seen you on Fox News. You're on Fox News for your riding. You're on Fox News for your riding group.
That. Yes. Gosh.
For your riding group.
This is so true.
Bicycle riding.
I know.
And this is the point, right? Which is, it's never just, oh, she's known for her career. You're known for so many other things. Yeah. And in that wave of being, you're achieving in so many facets. So you leave an Ivy League university. You don't just do the bachelor's in the one thing. You have to do the master's also in that thing. And then you move on into, okay, I'm going to make a career out of, well, our father spent 46 years in one company, and your career spans so many more. At what point do you go into, or in the early days, actually, let's talk about the early days, because the early days for you in your career was so unique. Your first job was so far away from where we lived.
Yeah.
The average person would look at that and go, oh, this is not convenient. But you took that job. Why?
The challenge. It wasn't the challenge, the opportunity. Let me say opportunity. I always look at what is the opportunity at the end of. And when I say at the end of, I leave the sentence open. At the end of this period of time, at the end of this experience, at the end of this phase, at the end of this job, at the end of this process. You're very correct. There are people who would back away from a lot. And I think you raised a very good point. What drives me? Look, when I took that first role, I didn't think of, gosh, I'm going to have to drive almost 3 hours every day or potentially relocate. Look, I couldn't even afford to relocate. It was cheaper to live with the family and drive and invest in the driving or taking the train. But it was a role in R&D. It was a role that was going to utilize my experience, what I had studied, and was going to fundamentally place me in a very unique and emerging part of the industry. And I thought, why not? I saw the opportunity. As I still see opportunity today, I don't see challenges. Now, I don't want to say that as if I don't have difficult moments. As you said, do I hear no and do I see no? Yeah, I have tough times. As a woman in the energy industry, there have been some really difficult times. And I was actually reading Bloomberg yesterday, and it was talking about the commodities trading sector and how there are almost no women and how there's almost no diversity. And so here I am chartering a path in an industry. Now, I've come from the energy sector that has barely embraced women and diversity. And I'm now in a subsector of the energy industry that blatantly doesn't have a lot of women or people from diverse backgrounds. And I'm charting a path. And so the arms aren't necessarily open wide saying, come, let's hug you and let's embrace you. I'm creating a legacy in an industry that doesn't really have seats at the table. If you look at the makeup of the industry, right? But look, talent is always recognized. Intellect is always recognized. It's one thing I found as an engineer. And proven results are always recognized. They're indisputable. One thing we cannot take away, though, is the impact of human relationships. And so as we get older, this becomes more and more important. People don't just read your resume. You need to have the right network. Hence, SeeMe, right? But when you ask me about why the drive and do I hear no, despite, because you can have drive and fight against the wall and just not make any progress. Look, sadly, less than 6% of investments globally go to women-owned and women-led organizations. You can't fight against that wall. You have to say, can I be one of the 6%? Or am I just trying to fight against something that just, is almost insurmountable to some extent, despite how much discipline and how much passion you may have? Now comes, as I said, the thicker skin in the older years than how textbook it was when you were younger, to effectively say, I'm just going to outwork everybody. I'm just going to prove myself even harder. And people will see that they have no choice but to work with me or to deal with me or to recognize I'm just as good to have at the table because I make a difference. The human dynamics, the politics, they start to play, human sentiments, human biases. These are now real things, real issues. And I think that's why I'm becoming more passionate as I'm getting older about really creating an organization that our first value is human leadership, to embrace people like me and to create a commodities trading company that in future will embrace more people like myself and fundamentally create a space in the industry to set a precedence that starts to break down some of these barriers. Now, we're obviously economically driven. We want to make money. We're here to drive results. We want to have a commercial value and a commercial space in the market. But the principle of what drives me is effectively that, the thread continues back to mommy and daddy.
It does, but I was also going to say, as you were speaking, I remembered you getting that. So in the summer, you worked at this engineering firm. And not only do they pay you, they
sponsored me, I think. They paid part of my tuition and gave me money for books.
Yeah.
But sadly, while everybody else partied in the summer, I worked.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Which is, on the one hand, you can say, yes, you're talented, etc., but you made sacrifices.
I have and continue to. I have always and continue to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And those sacrifices have been anything from not being able to party and let your head down over the summer to picking up jobs and roles that were inconvenient to the average person.
Yeah.
So you've lived in everywhere.
How many countries? Not in the sexiest places in some instances.
I think while we grew up in a culture where moving and being a third culture kid was, I guess, the norm for all of us.
Yes.
You, if we count the number of cultures, it's more than maybe you're
yes. So as you know, every year I teach a course at ESA, where I did my MBA, my alma mater, and it's a business case that's written about me and about my life. And I'm so happy that you have this podcast called Third Culture Africans, because there's obviously a book called Third Culture Kids, Third Culture Families. And the professor, Sebastian Reichy, who wrote this paper about me, 12, 13 years ago now. So I've been teaching every year at the university. He's now publishing a book.
Oh, cool.
And this time he's publishing a whole chapter on me, and they're actually going to use my real name, because in the past with the business case, it was with a pseudonym, so you couldn't find me. I was always very hesitant to share anything personal about myself.
We'll talk about that later.
No, but I'm bringing that up because you're talking about moving, across different cultures and taking jobs in places that have been inconvenient. And what drives me, look, I think I've moved 10, 11 countries. But in some cases, some roles where I may have lived in Malaysia, for example, I was leading Singapore, China, Thailand, all of Europe, all of Africa. So while my house may have been in a country, I have jobs where I probably made one relocation from the US to Malaysia and another relocation from Malaysia to Hong Kong, but there were like 8 countries, Dubai, the UAE, Saudi, and I was flying and crossing all these cultures for business, dealing with customers, dealing with employees, being able to transition. But I've also had some pretty quick relocations. I had a call in the downturn in 2015 on a Thursday that said, you can be in London on Monday for this new job, or the role you have is going into cost cutting. So we love you, we want you in the company. Be here on Monday. It's Thursday. I just moved to Hong Kong. Or your role is being cut. And I got on the plane by the Saturday. And went to work by the Monday.
And I think as your sister looking on the outside, I think that's the part of you that I see that perhaps your professional world or the professional world doesn't see about you. And I love that you've chosen to do this.
Right.
Because I couldn't even convince you to come on Third Culture Africans. And I was like, even when I'm desperate for an episode, I'm like, can you come on the show? Honestly, I can do it whatever time you want. And you're like, yeah, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable talking about myself. And I love that you're doing this, because I think as your sister, I get a front row seat in enjoying and in participating and being inspired and being motivated by a lot of the steps that you take. And I think I'm your younger sister, right? So naturally I look up to you. There's no like cheating that. But it's lovely that you've decided to do this, because I think a lot of the work that you're doing and a lot of the lives you've touched over the years that perhaps people aren't aware of. I think it's such a great choice that you've chosen this platform, because I think, one, you're a great orator and you're great at talking when we can get you to talk. But also I think there is a part of your journey that needs to be humanized, because there's a lot of it that on paper just seems quite intimidating. But the human element, which as your family, as your sister, I know you know, like I know the patches of hair falling out, say.
Yes.
I know the stress. I know the, oh my God, like literally I have to move, and having to make such quick decisions
Yes.
in your life after putting in so much work into a career and being told, actually, you could be obsolete in a minute if you don't make this tough decision. While it sounds amazing, Miss Go-Getter Thursday, Monday in the office in London, the reality is your life at that point
Unfolded,
and you had to make such a quick decision in one phone call. And I think your ability to, in some ways, navigate those challenges has been a huge part of your success. But at the same time, watching you reach a point at your, 25-year mark and going, you know what, I'm done working for somebody else. I'm going to give this a go on my own. And I think, of all three of us, I was the most likely to do that. And that's all I've done my whole career. But watching you get to that point where you bet on yourself, can you share the moment where you kind of decided, you know what? Because you've always bet on yourself in other things, but in your career, I don't think you've been as bold up until recently. What was the moment that sparked that down tools and betting on me?
Look, I hope that we have an episode 1 year from now where I'm celebrating the great success of Lisena and going, yep, I'm so glad I bet on myself, because right now it is very scary.
What in the in-between?
It is really scary.
Yeah.
It is a risk to try to knock down walls and doors, and you're hoping that luck and network and support and people who believe in you will pull you through. But, I think you raise a good point. Why at this time would I say I want to bet on myself? I left my last CEO job and I thought, okay, I could call the recruiters again. I could compete for the next CEO role and take all the psychometrics and be told all the things that I need to tighten up, shaping up. Don't speak this way. Women aren't perceived when they come across this way. It's not proper for people to, the shareholders to think you think this. And I thought, at what point does someone just be themselves, right? Or, having one child and someone on the board saying, do you plan to have more kids? Because we need to know. I think I'm sure my male counterparts don't get asked that question.
Yeah.
Or are you sure you can carry the load of this job with 2 children? They're young. They need you. I remember thinking, all of that as a woman. And the statistics, they're not that many females at the senior ranks.
Not at all.
And when they make it to the senior ranks, they have to fight to stay in the senior ranks in ways which I will humbly say potentially are different from the other gender. Because now you have to over-explain and over-prove why you're in the room. You're not in the room because you were chosen as a statistic. You're in the room because you deserve to be there. You have what it takes. You will deliver the results. But you find yourself being questioned more and having to explain more. And then, I remember thinking, okay, the chances are that, a lot of companies start, they don't succeed or they pivot or something else happens. I'm open to the outcomes. But certainly the decision to bet on myself on the chance that with everything commercially being what it is today, pointing in the right direction, I could create a company that's going to outlast my time as an individual and create value and really live on within the industry. That's exciting because for once, even though I'm surrounding myself with industry experts that are helping me design and guide and lead the company, I'm not having to obsess about whether or not having 2 children is going to impact my ability to deliver the P&L. Whether being a woman and expressing myself differently with a bit more emotion makes me less capable or less competent than my male counterpart. Whether because I haven't been able to hang out with the 13 men on the board because I'm the single woman and I cannot tell the boy jokes and I can't be in the places that they would want to go after midnight rules me out from building the right relationships to deliver the results for the company. That's why I actually bet on myself at this point in time. And I really mean it. Lisena becomes what I desire for Lisena to become. I want us to be a platform for more very clever individuals like myself who probably don't fit the mold, that we see when we see the splash on the big newspapers for what commodity companies look like in terms of where their leadership stands. And we embrace those people who can deliver value and who have something different to offer. We're not trying to be, sort of the mavericks in any way whatsoever. We, like everybody else, want to make money. We want to change the world. We want to be part of the energy transition. We want to create economic value. We want to be a place where people desire to work and they feel that they develop, and it's a choice to be in that company because that company is part of your identity and you're proud to say, I work for Lisena. But ultimately, when the softer things are said, I hope these are the things that will be said about Lisena. And that's exactly what I've done. I've done this at this time in my life.
You've touched on briefly the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated industry. I remember you calling me after going for an interview, and I think the woman thought you were the receptionist.
Yes.
But you were there for like the CEO interview.
Indeed.
What I laugh, but it's not funny in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women can relate to having situations where, and especially as a woman of color, where you're in a store and you're dressed like a customer. You're with your bag, your coat, and someone comes up to you and says, excuse me, can I get this in a size 5 or whatever? You're looking at them, and you're looking at them going, like literally, you check your outfit to make sure that you clearly are looking like a shopper just like them.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a similar experience in the energy industry. But what would you say if you had to pick one of the biggest challenges? What would you say that has been in your career so far?
I'm so sorry. Listening to you give that analogy almost brought me to tears. It's waking up every day as a third culture female. I remember getting to the USA. I'd spent about 12 years of my life in England at that time. And expressing myself in technical meetings was proving a challenge because I didn't have American words. But I wasn't any less capable or less intellectual. I just couldn't speak Americanism. Eventually I got there.
Route. I remember when you're like, are you going down the route? I'm like,
what's your route?
What is that? I'm like, route.
Yeah.
You're like, no.
Route.
Like, route.
Yeah. But it was, the way they learned engineering principles and the way we learned them in English was so different. And I was part of an R&D team. We're bringing a new technology to life. I remember going home just crying.
Yeah.
We talk about walking to a store and someone undermining you because of your appearance. But these are real emotional issues for me because I hope that it happens less and less to other people. It's not because I have a chip on my shoulder, I want to prove something. It's painful to have to want to prove yourself or explain yourself when the other person beside you isn't having to do that. And that's why I hope I can change something. I can do something different. And whether that's naive or not, I'll try, right?
Yeah.
And I will start a conversation around it as I will start a conversation around many things. And for me, the passion of SeeMe is bringing very experienced people who I know and I trust to come into this SeeMe platform to act as lived experience mentors. Meaning share how you made it to VP, share how you made it to this executive role, share how you made it in business, share how you made it in industry, regardless of, what sector you've come from, to inspire and help somebody else overcome where they are so that they can achieve their full potential. Because I'm all about this concept of achieving your full self and living your truth and living, authentically to who you are. But most importantly, having fun along the way.
Yes.
Right? So you asked me a question around, and I don't want to miss the question, what has been the biggest challenge? There was a role I had And they actually flew the executives over from Houston. I was in London at the time, because they wanted me to articulate very clearly what my strategy was. And the individual who had the role before me, I remember reaching out to him asking if he'd ever had any panel session of the sort. He said, no, this just never happened. I said, okay, look, either they don't trust me or I haven't gone out of my way to explain what my thoughts are or articulate my plans. It was great because it left me with a very clear learning that I must always just accept, I must just do this ahead of time, right? Rather than focus on like, why are they doing this to me? I said, you know what, I'm prepared now. Let me explain to you so that you become my supporter and you effectively back me. And it was 3 days. It was 3 whole days. And I was told by people, oh, you better make sure they understand what you're thinking. And these were people who had not put me into the role. Somebody else had selected me, bet on me, backed me. And I'm to understand they were detractors, disbelievers, or they were on the question mark. And so the 3-day panel session was put in place either to confirm that my backer was correct and I really was going to be what he said I would be, or they were correct. And so, I prepared. It was a very anxious time. And for 3 straight days, I presented through this panel session. And do you know, till this day, the 3 guys who flew over are one of my best friends.
Amazing.
And they were like, oh, wow, you really are as good as, Art says you are, right? And rather than taking any heaviness from the experience, I took joy away from being given the chance, because some people have something to offer and never get the chance to explain or express, or being given the platform to have a role where they can make impact or grow a business or grow a company. And I learned very quickly that, whether you like it or not, one of the ways to ensure that you get invited into a room is to very quickly display and showcase what value you have to offer. Because unfortunately, you're not being looked at as, oh, let's take her because she has value. It's, what value does she have to offer? And it's the other way around for us, right? We have to prove than being given the chance or carte blanche that we will have value to offer. So I think that's the way I would answer that question.
Thanks. You kind of just touched on a strategy for your success. You're now in a space where the energy industry is changing so much. I drive an electric car.
I don't yet.
You don't yet.
I will soon. Soon I'm changing.
But renewable energy is where we're moving, right? So the press says, so the news says, so says the world, right? And I'm buying into it. What would you say are the biggest challenges, or are the biggest challenges that you can foresee as we're having this global shift towards renewable energy, and you now having Lesena, which is now, a commodities trading business?
Look, the very obvious ones, right? The cost of capital for renewable projects, the runway for profitability versus the traditional energy sources today, they're still not comparable. Okay, so companies that are taking the foresight to invest and make the transition are doing it because they believe in the good of the future for many generations to come as far as climate change. I am also very passionate about renewable technology and renewable energies. My previous role working for one of the companies I work for, under that leadership team around 2019, we led the energy transition journey for that company, which today is still being very well executed and actually delivering very good results and positioning the company for the future. I think the way to think about it is, one, it's what's right for the world. The other one is we think about companies that are built, very well, but then you actually think about companies that transition generations and that pivot very well through time and through change. And I think any energy company that isn't thinking about this is probably also not going to be built to last and go from good to great, as
Love
right,
the book.
right? Oh, absolutely. Again, not plugging anything, but definitely one of mine.
Plug away.
Yeah, I know everyone talks about Good to Great, but people don't realize that he wrote another book called Built to Last.
Yeah.
Because you can hit great, but you can also fizzle out.
Exactly.
Right? And so no one as an executive, whether a CEO or someone in a leadership team, wants to lead a business that then doesn't survive their legacy, that doesn't survive their time. The only thing about the energy transition that I will say, as an African, you have to think about what parts of the world have made what impact on climate change, what parts of the world still live in energy poverty, what parts of the world still need access to basic energy and don't even have access to traditional energy resources before talking about leaping when industrialization and electrification does not exist.
Even exist,
And so one of the things I do as an executive when we're talking about energy transition is help companies where I work ensure that the transition plan is designed correctly for different regional focus. What we do for Middle East, what we do for Europe or Russia Caspian is different from what we'll do for Africa. If we want to send electric vehicles into Africa, ask yourself if there's electricity to recharge the car.
Okay.
So while I'm passionate, I hope that being the one voice in the leadership team with Africa experience as an African, but really a global leader, because to be fair, my Africa experience is a small percentage of my entire career, right?
I was like,
of my entire career.
You've only lived in Africa for how many years?
Exactly. I know. But still, my heart is there, my passion is there. It's still the base of my culture. And luckily I had 2 roles that covered about a 5-year span. And, I ran the P&L. I ran 25 countries at one go, 18 countries at one point. And so I feel I have that credibility to be one person in the room that can say, look, I'm not saying this because I was sitting in London or Paris running it remotely. I'm saying it because, I understand. I have on-ground lived experience, right? And so, yes, Lisena is as a company that trades oil products, refined, non-refined, and trade soft commodities. We have our strategies on where we want to pivot into biofertilizers, biofuels, focusing on investing in companies that are doing LNG for clean cooking fuel replacement, and effectively trying to deliver, either through solar or wind, energy solutions into Africa. And so, I think where we are as a company that's young, getting the working capital investment, we need to effectively liquidate the commercial pathways that we have. And upon that, we're looking at asset acquisitions. And from asset acquisitions, we're looking at the energy transition space as well. And we have about, 3 or 4 pillars we've picked where we feel we can afford to go into and we can create value. And those are the ones which I mentioned.
Amazing. Transitioning from CEO to entrepreneur. Woo-woo. Welcome to the dark side.
Scary.
Welcome to the dark side.
Scary.
You've kind of seen it through the different stages, right? From employee to senior management, C-suite, and now being a business owner. What advice would you give to other women who aspire to be in leadership positions in the energy sector?
Wow. As entrepreneurs,
I'm good at this, right?
You are. Your questions are like tough. I'm thinking, am I, like on some hot seat somewhere? Feel this pressure to leave these good nuggets.
Commit.
Yeah, I know. Are you talking about within industry? Or are you talking about like as an entrepreneur?
No, advice for female leaders, right? Because you're an employee, but you can still be a leader.
This is true.
You can still be you're in C-suite, you're an executive, you're still an employee, but you're a leader in some respects.
You can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to leave your company and start something.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so for someone who's done both,
yes,
what advice would you give to any other woman who is aspiring to get into a leadership position in the energy sector?
Look, core commercial value is a real thing. You have to have a business that delivers at its core commercial value and returns. Okay. Now, the beauty of the, free cash flow and the excess on the balance sheet that you create now allows the creativity, right? But when you're within a company environment, you also have to sell your vision. First, you have to have vision. And then you have to sell the vision to the shareholders or the investors that will have to support you. And, that's where the entrepreneurship comes in. The business leader part is the first part that I talked about, the creating value, the building the organization with the systems and the processes and the culture, and hiring the right people and picking the right people and knowing your space and occupying your space in the market, pleasing your customers, delivering technology or whatever makes you unique, right? Then comes the second part, which is the entrepreneurial side, which is having vision and effectively bringing something new to life. Like, for example, one of the things that Listener is passionate about is the digitization and the use of digital technology within the energy commodity space. And I've designed a digital commodity solution, which we are testing and trialing in the market and going to learn from to understand how do we, help transition what is a very traditional organization into the digital technology space to make us more efficient, more transparent, and effectively help manage risk, for example, and make financial transactions easy and seamless and potentially take away some of the fraudulent activities or exposure or risk to fraudulent activities. So I think that's where, even when sitting in an organization, you don't have to obsess about quitting and starting your own company or finding like-minded people to get together with to launch something. You can still be entrepreneurial within your organization. If you have a pivotal idea that can create a new opportunity, create a new portfolio, or drive the business in a new direction where other people may not have seen the vision for how to do it or why or how to get there. And so I would recommend and suggest that other women, think about this example and use it to the best of their ability. But it's also okay to not be someone who creates something new. Some people are good at delivering and managing what already exists. And that in itself is a vision of its own kind.
Yeah.
Because you can take an existing business that has a very good business case and still not deliver. And so I don't think everybody has to lose sleep about, am I creating something new all the time? There's still value to just delivering on the core business.
Amazing. I'm a bit scared to ask this one because I don't want it. I think gender pay gap. And
gender gap in general. Not just
but
pay.
I feel like it's the one thing that as women in any industry face. And we've talked about privately, I guess, how that happens. And we understand the mechanics of it and being a mother and what that does to your career and some of the sacrifices you make. In the balance, right? You're a mom of two, building a business, and then still navigating both sides of the industry, right? Because in some instances, you're someone's customer and you're someone's supplier. So you have to go to someone to get whatever it is that you're supplying. And navigating all of those things and ultimately even in that position being faced with, but why should I give you that much?
Yes.
What would you say is the best way of dealing with it?
It'll be foolhardy of me to say I've solved it because this question you have asked me in the last year has brought me home in tears quite a few times. I'm trying to source supply. I know the good old boy got it. I didn't get it. Why? I'm telling you I have a customer they want to buy. What is, in the end, this is where networks come into play. You go and you track down people who have worked with you, they know you, you're a proven and known entity to them, and where they can open the door, let them open the door on your behalf. You don't have to solve everything by yourself. I think it's okay to have champions and people speak on your behalf in the basis of the question that you're asking me, because ultimately you're not going to solve everything by yourself, right? This is not an equation that's going to add up and on the right-hand side, a solution will come up. You're dealing with humans, you're dealing with human emotions, subconscious biases, you're dealing with political, cultural, religious positions, which you don't see when you're talking to someone. You don't know what their leaning is. You don't know what their no-go areas are. You just don't know. You just don't know. And I think this is where getting into the top echelon, now you're solving for other things. You're solving for real life problems.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I would probably say that at this point, you don't solve that. You try to, through networks and conversations, understand who you're dealing with and if other people should champion and speak on your behalf.
Amazing. Future of commodities trading. What do you predict for the future in light of technological advancements and at the moment, everything we've got going on in the world?
Yes. I don't like doing predictions because, you watch it and go, I said that. I got it wrong.
Hey.
But then you're like, I got it right.
Yeah.
So I'm very cautious. Look, right now, what we can see in front of us with all the geopolitical shifts, I will say that the industry is still very much needed, still returns very handsome results, creates very good careers for people. It's still one that is very intricate because you have the paper trading side, you have the speculative position side. And when we talk about global trade, it's one of the only industries that truly globally has to trade across borders and across so many lines. And so I continue to hope that as we navigate political and economic challenges, most importantly, geopolitical challenges to how we trade, that we somehow take into account that humanity still requires resources to be balanced, supply and demand footprint across who has and who needs. Correct, right? And so I would say that's why at this stage in my career, Lisena has gone into that space. Within the energy sector where I have experience, it's an area that I like to focus on because I think there's something still altruistic, despite some of the, not so great press and things that we hear about this industry. In the end, it's a human need of who has and who needs, and we as commodity trading companies are balancing that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me do this with you in my flops in Dubai. It's been absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see what SeeMe does, the show does in more episodes. And Lisena, I think it'll be much like your TED Talk. Where you look back and go, yeah, she kind of got it.
Can I meet her? She knew a few things.
Yeah, she knew something. I'm not mad at her. That version of me, I like her.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much. And I look forward to being here again if you have me.
Absolutely. And I look forward to being on Third Culture Africans,
You'll do
by
it
the
now?
way. I will.
Amazing.
I will, indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the questions and for giving me the space to express myself. And for also not saying too many personal things that would have embarrassed me. I was scared about that. Yeah. Oh, what's this going to ask me now today?
No, I'm good. Thank you.